Okay. Okay, pretty close here. Alrighty. All right, we'll call the order right at 1:30. I'd like to welcome everyone to our hybrid meeting. So technically hybrid because I'm here with staff. And we'll start off by recognizing that we're conducting our business today, principally on the territories of the Kupetchesett and the Tishat First Nations, but also the Chanos peoples, and perhaps even beyond, given that we have a hybrid meeting going on and we have guests. With that, I will turn it to the fact that we are having a hybrid meeting, which does mean that we'll be broadcasting this meeting through Zoom, through YouTube, and onto our own website using a YouTube embed. And so we do have individuals who are here in the boardroom today who are attending, but we also may have attendees who have pre-registered to become attendees. They're not panelists, but that means they get to join and see exactly what's going on and get the direct feed from Zoom itself. What we won't be doing, however, is watching the comments on YouTube or any written comments on Zoom. And so if there are any official questions or comments from members of the community, then that would come through an email address, responses@acrd.bc.ca. And with that, we'll check at the end of the day during the question period time on the agenda, and then we'll go from there. Okay, thank you. The next item is the approval of the agenda, and I'm not certain that we have any late items or late materials to add. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of any late items for the meeting today.
Okay, great. Now I'm wondering if we could have a motion to accept the agenda as provided. Thank you, Director McNabb, seconded by Director Cole. Okay, are there any comments? I think the only thing I noted is that Director Shannon may need to step out at about 2:50, I believe. Yeah, bus. Okay, with that in mind, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 3. Are there any declarations in regards to conflicts of interest, perceived conflicts of interest, or gifts exceeding $250 in value as per the Local Government Act? Director Bodner, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there's a conflict of interest for 9.1B, McAdee.
Okay, 9.1B. Okay, so we'll make sure that you're removed from the meeting just electronically and then brought back in at that point.
Thank you.
All right, and I'd ask maybe staff to kick me if I forget. Thank you. Okay, are there any other declarations? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 4, and that is the Board of Directors meeting minutes, 4A, for September 22nd, 2021. Oh, you're going to have to wave a lot higher for that, Director Shannon. But moved by Director Shannon, seconded by Director McNabb. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Yeah, I get a bit of a reflection from all the ceiling lights onto the screen, so sometimes it's hard to see slight movements. Okay, next up, one thing I can see though is if you look at your options in the Zoom menu, you may be able to raise your hand and it puts like a flashing bit around your screen, and it might be easier for me to see. So maybe do both, I don't know. If it's too difficult, don't worry about it, but we'll go from there. Next item is the Personnel Committee meeting minutes from September 23rd, 2021. Moved by Director Cole, seconded by Director McNabb. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Item C is the Beaver Creek Water Advisory Committee meeting dated September 27th, 2021. Director McNabb, move adoption. Seconded by Director Cote. Thank you. Okay, any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. And then lastly, we have item D, the West Coast Committee meeting, October 6th, 2021. Everyone, Director Steer, I think, and Director Cole. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Great. Okay, so that brings us to item 5, which is the delegations, presentations, and petitions. Normally for presentations, we have a 10-minute maximum for them. So when you start, I'll start a bit of a timer. And unless you get pretty close to the end of your presentation, or it seems that way, I may interrupt you. If you see me hold up 2 fingers, it's going to be more difficult here, then that usually means you have 2 minutes left or 1 minute left. I won't interrupt you like that, I'll just start talking. But right now, we are going to recognize Mr. Mike Can, Fire Chief for the Sprout Lake Volunteer Fire Department. We will be recognizing some long service to Sprout Lake. Welcome, Mr. Chief.
Thank you very much for having us. Today we're honored to recognize the long service of 2 of our members, Walt Fensky, who is a founding member of the Sprout Lake Fire Department, and John DeBortier. They're both retired in the last 2 months. And on behalf of the community of Sprout Lake and Sprout Lake Fire Department, I'd like to thank them for their service.
Okay. Yes, I'd like to invite either or both individuals, if they'd like to have anything to say, please go ahead. We'd love to hear from you.
Well, obviously I didn't prepare anything for this, but yeah, I've been a volunteer out there for ever since it started, with a couple of years exception. And nobody asked me to retire, but I'm getting too old to do this now. And we got a lot of good young guys out there, and a lot of these guys are doing a lot of training, so everything will carry on fine. And now I don't have to go out every Tuesday night. But I kind of miss that, and I miss, of course, all the people that we have out there. We got some really good people.
Thank you so much. Did you have anything you'd like to say? Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm not a big one on words, but I would just like to thank Mike and the rest of the crew at Sprout Lake. I went there just to help the community, and found out it was a very rewarding gesture. So I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Thank you for that. Okay, with that in mind, I'm wondering if Dr. Cote, you'd like to say some words. Please go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. I'd really like to send my greatest appreciation for members of the Sprout Lake Fire Department, Walt Fensky and John DeBortier. Really want to thank you for your dedication for all of these years to our community and mentoring new firemen that were coming in to help out and volunteer for our, sorry about the machines. Really want to thank you, and hopefully we'll be seeing you around in the community. And as things open up, you can attend Sprout Lake Fire Department functions and be honored by the members, because you really did put a big part of your life into our community, and we so appreciate that. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy your retirements. I'm sure you're missed on Tuesday nights. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cote. Are there any other comments or questions? Director McNabb, please go ahead.
I'd just like to say thank you for all your service, John and Walt, from Beaver Creek, where, I mean, with our mutual aid and the many years that we've been associated fire departments, your service means a lot to Beaver Creek. So I wish you the best in your retirement and from this and from other things, and hope you'll certainly be part of the picture when the groups are able to get together. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other comments? Oh, Charlie, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to offer my congratulations to Walter and John too for their years of service. 51 years of service is outstanding. Very few in the province, let alone, or Canada, in fact, that have gone 51 years of service. So outstanding amount of service, and very good. Thanks, John, for all your service too. 31 years is right up there too. Thank you very much. Enjoy your retirement.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Are there any other comments? Okay. Well, on behalf of the board, gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for your years of service. I am completely sure that anytime you wanted to head back out there and say hello to the folks on practices, definitely do so. Yes, I think fire department service is one of those things that is the foundation of a community. And before my nation went into treaty, our coverage wasn't something that was covered by ourselves. In fact, we had to contract with the Bamfield Fire Department. And I am very certain that the arrangements that we are going to undertake now will be working closely with Bamfield on trying to learn everything we can from individuals such as yourself and move forward in a very good way. So thank you once more. Okay, so with that, the next item we have is item 5B. We have Ms. Sharon Todd, the program manager, and I think Evelyn Clark for the Central Island Division of Family Practice. I'm not certain who's speaking, but Sharon, if you wanted to start off and then kick it off to Evelyn if need be. Welcome.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks very much for having us. I will pass it over to Evelyn Clark, who is our Executive Director of the Central Island Division of Family Practice. And if it's okay for us to share our screen, we do have a short presentation for you to explain why we're here and what we're up to.
Thank you, Sharon. And thanks everyone for taking time to listen to us today. As Sharon said, I'm Evelyn Clark. I'm the Executive Director of the Central Island Division of Family Practice. The divisions exist all throughout BC, and the purpose of the division is to further healthcare in the area and to assist. It is member-driven by our physicians and family practitioners, including nurse practitioners. We are a not-for-profit board of directors of who I serve. Pardon me. Divisions have been around for about 20 years, and we originally started as a division in Oceanside, which is from the Noose north to Bowser, incorporating Parksville and Qualicum Beach. At the time, Port Alberta had a small satellite division, but they were having a trouble finding a board and doing the things that are required through our funders, which is General Practice Services Committee and the Ministry of Health. And we amalgamated with them in 2019. And we help primary care providers to work collaboratively with Island Health, First Nations Health Authority, other First Nations in the area, General Practice Services Committee and the Ministry of Health. And we're doing that in order to basically create better patient care and to assist our family physicians and nurse practitioners in feeling they're doing a better job and giving better service to their patients. So in the last short while, we have been working on something called a primary care network project. And the primary care network is a group of providers, physicians, NPs, allied health professionals that are located in a specific geographical area. Back in 2018, the Oceanside division created the Oceanside PCN, and we are in our second year of implementation. And then in 2019, when Port Alberni and surrounds came into the division, we decided to have a second PCN, and that PCN is in the process of creating something called a service plan. And Sharon Todd is the service plan project manager. So it's basically about health system overhaul, and we're hoping to do the very best that we can do to find enough physicians and family practitioners and nurse practitioners to serve the community, but also augment those things. The three things that are important to primary care networks is access to timely comprehensive care, coordinated team-based care, and the ability to attach patients to physicians or family practitioners. And that includes extended hours, access to urgent care centers or community care centers, and culturally safe care, coordinated care, and good communications amongst the whole team. And I think, Sharon, you're on the next one, right? No,
Sure.
Me. Okay, take it away.
So a primary care network is a kind of intangible idea that if you're not working in healthcare might not mean too much to you. So to give you a couple of examples of what other primary care networks across British Columbia have done to date, you may have heard in the news some urgent primary care centers being built in various communities. Another concept under primary care networks is community health centers. You may have heard of nurse practitioner clinics. We have a sort of mixed mode one here in Oceanside that we've built with our primary care network here. You may have heard of nurses being installed into family practice, social workers being installed into family practice, perhaps mobile clinics popping up, occupational therapists being installed into family practice, or even pharmacists being installed into family practice clinics. So in Port Alberni, as Evelyn said, we've been doing some consultation work for the past 3 or 4 months. We've gone out to all the care providers in your community. So that's going to include your family physicians, nurse practitioners, teams of health professionals at West Coast General Hospital, as well as community organizations that might have anything to do with or have a stake whatsoever in what we build for your primary care network in the Alberni Valley. So these consultations have started in around July. They finished at the end of September, and we worked with all of those people as well as our First Nations partners and anybody that, as I said, might have a stake in this. There's a lot of people sitting on our working groups as well as our writing groups. So this is a very collaborative process. I just want to be clear about that. And these 9 things here were the things that came up. They sort of rose to the top. We heard a lot of things, obviously. 3 months of consultation is fairly lengthy. But amongst the things that popped up the most, we heard of a lack of access to care to primary caregivers. We know that there's a big need for culturally safe, trauma-informed care in the Alberni Valley. We heard that a lot. Certainly a lack of access to mental health services was cited in almost every consultation. We heard over and over again that there's really a need for a city center clinic, perhaps on a walk-in basis. That doesn't exist currently. There's a lack of access to substance use services, although you have lots of fantastic community organizations and folks that are working their very hardest to bring services to the people that need them the most. We know that there's not quite enough. We heard very often that wound care is something that is needed for the street entrenched population, and it's very hard for them to get access to that care. There's a need for navigators or advocates to help people to find the services. So while you have a lot of services, sometimes it's very difficult for people to figure out where to go or how to get in touch with those people. And sometimes that care isn't available in a timely manner. So if somebody's ready to say, let go of a substance use problem and they need to do it right away, sometimes they're waiting several months. And we've found that that's just not really working for the folks out there in the Alberni Valley. We heard of a need for a mobile healthcare unit to reach your more remote areas. We know that we've got fantastic nursing in New Chalmers Tribal Council who are going out to those areas and visiting folks and giving care. We need a little bit more service there. And we heard of a lack of maternity services in general in the Alberni Valley. So for next steps, we've done that consultation process. The next thing we do is we've got a working group formed again with all of the partners that have had to do with this project. And they advise us on which strategies they would like us to tackle based on those needs that we identified in the last slide. So our working group consists of physicians, nurse practitioners, our First Nations Health Authority, our First Nations partners, there's a lot of those. Island Health sits at the table, and of course the Division of Family Practice. So that's who we're representing here. So the Ministry of Health will take the data that we have supplied them. They'll calculate how many people they believe are lacking access to care in your area. And with that information, we will take that, that data and decide as a group what issues are the biggest concern and what we can tackle, what solutions we can come up with to tackle those problems. Those solutions will be written into a service plan that goes through several checkpoints. Again, a very collaborative process, checked on many levels. And that is ultimately submitted to the Ministry of Health. That should be done by the end of this calendar year. We're looking for a submission in December. And if the Ministry of Health approves our service plan, we should receive funding to begin starting the services potentially in the spring of 2022. So we're not talking years away. We should begin to operationalize a plan if all goes well in the next 6 months. So that's good news for the Alberni Valley. And with that, our presentation is complete and we are open to taking any questions that you might have.
Okay, if you could, yes, thank you. Okay, so with that, I'm wondering if there are any comments or questions for our presenters. Dr. Cote, Dr. Roberts, and Dr. Steer. Please go ahead, Dr. Cote.
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you to Sharon and Evelyn for coming and presenting to the board of directors. I did have a meeting with Sharon Todd a couple of weeks ago regarding just a conversation with the health network and how we can collaborate going forward. And it was a very interesting conversation. And I'm very happy to see you bring that information to the board. It gives us a good insight as to what's out there and what the process that you're going through right now is. So I'd just like to say thank you for that at this time and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. We'll probably be in touch in the next week or two. Actually, we need to talk to you some more. So.
Okay, I think next up we have Dr. Roberts and then Dr. Steer.
Yes, through the chair. Thank you, Sharon and Evelyn. It's nice to hear that this is coming to fruition. I, for one, live on the east side of the island, and I'm looking forward to hooking up at some point to try to get a new family physician. I've been trying to deal with our physician who has left the country and left 3,500 patients hanging. So it's quite an interesting process that's going on over on that side, as I'm sure you're well aware, and I'm sure other areas as well. At any rate, I appreciate your comments, and I'm glad to see that this coastal network is working out. So cheers and thanks for that.
Okay, Dr. Steer, please go ahead.
Great. Thank you for the presentation, and I'm outside on the west coast here in Tofino. But I was very appreciated the presentation because you're in the working group collaboration where you identified those 9 areas that you had listed. I would say they accurately reflect many of the issues that we're facing out here outside the Alberni Valley, but they're, I would say, very accurate in their description. Director Cote actually asked the question in terms of collaboration with the west side here, where that might be appropriate in developing your data set. I did have just one comment to make that one of the issues that we're facing out here is that in terms of the recruitment, for example, of physicians, the biggest issue that has come forward is the ability to house them. and identifying ways that that we can work collaboratively together with either the regional district, with the VHA, or whatever player wants to come to the table. Because we had actually recruited a physician, but was unable to retain them because of housing and those issues that come around there. And that also pertains to our nurses. 2 nurses are mental health workers that we have had identified funding for. So I just wanted to put that out there and to really thank you for the work that you're doing, and all the questions I had you answered in your presentation in terms of timelines and how those submissions to the ministry will lay back into actionable plans. So thank you very much.
That's great.
Okay. Evelyn, please go ahead.
I just want to respond to Dr. Steer. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Steer. I want you to know that the division out in Tofino Euclid is connected to the rural and remote divisions of British Columbia. We have yet to be out there, but we are working closely with them because we understand about the cross-pollination that goes on with patients and services. So we are in constant conversation with them. But so you know, we're just to manage expectations that this is around the Alberni Valley that we're building this project.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay. On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation, and we would love to check in with you again once you've kind of gotten closer to completing your work.
Thanks. We'd be happy to come back and update you.
Okay. Alrighty, and with that, that brings us to, and I think we start with Dan. So this is Dan Buffett, and I believe Steve Kazeki, the Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation. Alrighty, so I'm not certain who starts, so I think it's Dan. You look like you're unmuted, so please go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, both Steve and I come together to provide. Wanted to thank you for an opportunity to provide an update of our 2 organizations that are working together in the regional district here and investing in communities and your leaders there for fish, wildlife, and habitats here. And we have a short presentation. I'll just share my screen, and I'll just confirm that people can see the screen there.
Looks good, Dan.
Okay, and I'll just a quick intro about the first organization, the Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation. I'm the CEO, Dan Buffett, and really we're a granting organization. We grant funds for conservation projects throughout BC that benefits fish, wildlife, and their habitats here in BC, as well as provide a number of educational services that connect people to nature, primarily in the K-12, but also in communities. And one of the important aspects of the work we do is in our forests. And that's where today Steve Kazuki is also co-presenting with me from the Forest Enhancement Society. And Steve, I'll just hand it over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us. Yeah, like HCTF, the Forest Enhancement Society, we also give money to groups in local areas, to experts in your district, and in order for them to do good work in the forest. And very much non-traditional. It's not big forest companies, although it can be. It's quite often local governments like yourselves and First Nations and a whole bunch of other participants across the forest landscape.
And one of the partnerships that we began, both of our organizations, is back in 2016, where we came together to focus primarily. We had a common mandate for, as Steve mentioned, forests and wildlife in our area. And then as granting organizations, the FESBC stepped up and provided nearly $5.8 million since then to fund some joint projects in BC. Now, some examples of projects, and we have a number of within the regional district here, is contributing funding to the Marmot Recovery Foundation for the work on marmot work in and around the regional district. a number of projects relating to bat diversity, improving the habitat, understanding about bats, protecting their habitats, and also monitoring for some of one of the diseases called the white nose syndrome as well too. A couple of joint projects over the years relating to fur bearers here on Vancouver Island. Again, collecting information about their populations that feeds back into better management of those resources. And a couple projects too on regarding Roosevelt elk, which is the picture in my background here. You know, one project is a habitat study just to the north of the regional district. Again, pulling information about the movement of elk to better manage those populations on the island. And the second one is a relocation program of relocating some elk, mainly around the Sayward area, into the Henderson Valley, just adjacent to the Namint Valley here within the regional district. So I was asked just to provide a quick update on that. They began year one of their project and moved a dozen or so elk into that Henderson Valley, but they did have to take a pause in year two with COVID, given their involvement with a number of stakeholders. So that project continues on this year as part year two of a 5-year project, and that should pay dividends to, again, repopulating some of the elk that had previously been in the Henderson and those valleys around the Barkley Sound area. One of the background of the HCTF is we are a nonprofit organization, and we're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year, beginning back in 1981, when it was started by a number of anglers and hunters that agreed to pay a surcharge on their hunting and fishing licenses. Since then, we've expanded a lot of our funding through court fines, some specific government initiatives and funding as well too. And as a result, we've invested more than $195 million in grants in BC since that time. This year actually was a record year for HCTF. We invested $9.3 million in funding for 250 projects in BC. And as we drop down into Vancouver Island, what that means is a little over $1 million invested in 33 projects here in the island there. Some of the pictures here, you're seeing the first project. An example is the marbled murrelet. Again, you know, similar to some other projects, gathering some information. So management of those species from a forest perspective as well is really key to their monitoring. The Tranquil Creek project as well too, which focuses on salmon and enhancement and restoration there. And you know, the lead on that is the Central West Coast Forest Society. Western toads are a key couple of projects as well too within the Barkley Sound area, and there's a number of projects there that are led by the wetland stewards for Barkley and Clayoquot Sound that are conducting a number of projects to reduce the mitigation of toads that are either run over, but also and improving their movements as well too. We've got a number this year this past 2 year actually with COVID resulted in a number of our projects and information moving online, supporting the K-12 program. And so this really provides information for teachers to integrate information in their curriculum and connecting their school and the youth to nature as well too. And so we support a number of facilitators and grants to be able to get kids out into nature, or conversely, you know, stay on the school property and see and understand that nature there. A lot of these projects are proposed each year. We have an intake actually that is just open now, where we receive about over 400 applications for funding each year. And then we take those proposals and have a series of technical groups that evaluate each of those proposals. So as we saw this year, there was about 250 projects that are funded. with the funding that we have. And that's why, bringing partners in, such as the FESBC, is really key as a partner to really help out and expand the number of projects, good quality projects that get funded each year. And with that, Steve, I'm just going to hand over to you to talk about FESBC.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And yeah, for the Forest Enhancement Society, we're very pleased to have partnered with the Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation. They have decades of biology and wildlife management expertise, and that in turn allows us to focus on our specialty, which is forest enhancement. And we have 269 projects all around the province, very significant Indigenous peoples involvement, and lots of examples of where Indigenous people have stepped up to take the lead on these projects, which is quite empowering from their perspective. Lots of details, but I thought I would just share with you some of the significant outcomes of this work. Number one, a lot of the carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, potent greenhouse gases, have been much better managed in the forest. And the equivalent of that is over 1 million cars off the road for a year. So we're really moving the dial and helping BC and Canada meet our international climate change targets. In addition to that, one of our other big focuses is helping to protect communities and the infrastructure and the recreational values. 120 communities are now safer as a result of the projects that we've done. And all of that creates a lot of social benefits, and especially in terms of accelerating the growth of the bioeconomy in British Columbia. And part of that is over 2,000 jobs created. Next slide. So it's not often that I can look at a regional district and not find local projects. So I would encourage you, if you know people that have an interest in improving forest conditions in your area, to please give FES a call, or we can easily find us on the website. But just some examples on the coastal area of British Columbia that might give you some idea of what you could apply for funding for. With the Cowichan tribes, they wanted to improve the riparian ecosystem and restore the health and functioning of those ecosystems. Quite a bit of using of waste fiber, particularly where it would have been burned and created a lot of emissions. Open burning produces a lot of methane and some nitrous oxide, which are particularly potent as greenhouse gases. And if we can use that wood instead of burning it, then we can avoid that emission and help contribute to our bioeconomy in British Columbia. There was one fire risk reduction project in WAS that we funded, and a real interesting project in Haida Gwaii where the town people wanted to space out the trees so the owls could fly between the trees and the goshawks and improve the black bear habitat. And the trees that they left behind are much more commercially valuable, cedar, and culturally significant to the Tan people. And so those are just some examples, and I'd love to get a call from you or people that could advance a project idea that we could fund. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Steve. And with that, just again, a reminder similar to Steve that, our proposals, we're not government, we are a nonprofit. So we are seeing more proposals from Indigenous nations and NGOs and academic and industry as well too being funded. So I think it's the theme, I've heard even the presentation before about partnerships is really key to, keeping our ecosystem intact and finding that great balance. So with that, thank you. And if there's time for questions, that would be great.
Alrighty, thank you very much, Mr. Kuzuki and Mr. Buffett. I think that brings us to any comments or questions folks might have. I have Dr. Shannon, and then Dr. Paulson, and then Director Roberts, and Dr. Bodner.
Thank you. Am I good to go? Okay, thank you very much for the presentation, guys. My question's for Dan, I think more, sorry, than Steve. Just going back to the Roosevelt Elk, great to hear that project's going through. My question is, when you guys are monitoring fur-bearing animals, that's ungulates and predators, like all over the island, all over the province. My question is, do you guys have any monitoring programs or looking at any monitoring programs for the viral disease going through the deer on the island right now that's been reported?
Now, that's a really good question. What I'll do is really the province ends up leading that. You know, as a funder, we don't necessarily often hear that, but I'm happy, you know, Director Shannon, to follow up with my provincial contact and let you know. Typically, there is some that I'm aware, but I just don't know if it's specifically on the island or not, but I'll get that clarified.
Okay, awesome. That would be great. Just because we're seeing it more in the news that it appears to be spreading from the Gulf Islands now into Vancouver Island, and they're seeing it from kind of Souk and reported cases up to Merville. And yeah, just curious if we've got or planning to watch it. Thank you.
Okay, so next up we have Director Roberts and then Director Paulson. And then Director Bogner.
Through the chair, to both Dan and Steve, I'm really pleased to see the work that you're doing, particularly with regards to forestry management. In my area alone, we support the Thornton Creek Hatchery, which works with the Central West Coast Forest Society. And I know that the involvement with regards to the Tronquil Creek Salmon and Enhancement Project, the work you guys are doing is fantastic. And I'm also a member of the Parksville Qualicum Fish and Game and support them, and a former member of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. As a hunter and fisher, I find it really impressive that that you folks are through the Habitat Conservation Trust Fund and Forest Enhancement Society BC. They're doing this tremendous work. I just want to say thank you again. Keep up the work, really, really good work. And if I can be of any help in our community, I'd be more than happy to support you. Thank you.
Okay, I think the next person we have here is Director Paulson and then Director Bogner. Thanks. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dan and Steve, for your presentation. A couple of incredible groups that you belong to. But my question is just a quick comment to Dan or from Dan with regards to the Roosevelt elk. And in the past, we've been made aware of the heartbreaking poaching from time to time. And I'm just curious if you had a comment on whether or not the poaching of the elk is still a serious problem, or it's less prevalent now and the herds are doing fine.
Well, thank you very much for the comments, especially both Director Roberts and Paulson. I don't have an up to date. I know poaching as of a year ago when I talked to the provincial COs, you know, that still was, I think it's still a source. I don't know if that continues this year or not. But I think that when I've talked with them, that still remains a key part of their management program as they move forward for the management of elk. So it's definitely not forgotten, that's for sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think the next person we have is Dr. Bogner. Did I miss anyone? Dr. Steer. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Me?
Yeah, go ahead, Diane.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan and Steve, for that presentation. It was very interesting. And because I'm on the Air Quality Commission, I'm very interested in what is happening with our climate change. And very impressive to see through your program there, you're able to keep 5.3 million tons of carbon dioxide out of the air. It's really great. So I just keep up the good work, and I will certainly take this back to the Air Quality Commission meeting to see what we can come up with to perhaps help the valley here with climate change. Thank you.
Okay, I have Dr. Steer and then Dr. Shannon.
Thank you, gentlemen. I do appreciate it. And in fact, I was up at Tranquil doing, looking at brood stock for Tofino salmon enhancement. So I'm very familiar with the Valley and with the work that CWF is doing. Just a quick question in terms of on your website, would you have the criteria for funding up on your website, and would it be accessible from there, just to see if the potential appropriate projects would fit the criteria for your funding?
Sure, Director Steer. Yes, definitely. We have that on our website right now. Our application opened mid-September. It closes early November, I think the 5th. And if you go to our grant section at hctf.ca and look at grants, there's a number of different types of enhancement grants, which is typically the fish and wildlife grants. There's some stewardship grants as well too. But happy to just send you that direct link, Director Steer, through the chair there, so you've got that link as well too. And Steve, yeah, in terms of applications, I hand it over to you.
Yeah, we've got 5 purposes, but there's not a lot of hardwired fences around our funding. But what you can do is you could go to our website. There's an interactive map. You can search our projects, just browse through them, and that'll give you a really good sense of what we will fund. We love projects that do more than one thing. So if we're funding a fuel risk reduction project to protect the community from wildfire, we like to see recreational opportunities enhanced and wildlife habitat enhanced, and using the fiber instead of burning it when you're thinning out the trees. And if you can do all of those things, and you can tick, each dollar does 4 or 5 different things in terms of meeting our goals for the province, that greatly increases your chances of being successful in receiving a grant.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I think Director Shannon and then Director Cote are next. Is there anyone else? Okay, please go ahead, Director Shannon.
Thank you. Another question just kind of clicked following a couple of comments. Dan, again, this is for you. I'll first just echo Director Roberts' comments. I'm a hunter and fisher too, and I'm just so happy that part of your slide presentation shows that fees that we're paying on licenses and tags, hunting and fishing, is going back into projects like this. So just kind of the general public can see where some of this is going back to. But my question is I understand that the Mint LEH draw for Roosevelt elk has not been available for a few years. And I was just wondering if the COs, or maybe if there was any correlation when that draw was available. Was there an increased amount of or noticed of poaching, and if since that draw's been gone, has that affected it at all, or no? Thank you.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's interesting. Just yesterday, I was just following up for this presentation. I was asking a couple of the provincial officers there, and it was a number of due to the numbers why the LEH draw no longer occurred. Was poaching an aspect of it? Yes. Was it the only driver? No. I mean, there's forest practice. There's a lot of other things that are also connected to it, as well as you and many others know as well too. So I think that's I don't think it's clear that it's not just poaching. That's not a silver bullet, but it was one of the I guess drivers of it. But I think there's a lot of other components of it relating to habitat disturbance, the management of the resource here on the habitat forest side. That is really important there. And I know a lot of the government folks are putting in a number of protections in place to try and protect those areas and those habitats in that valley. And I know it's a pretty active working group. I think that was just struck in the last year for that area as well too. So I think it's pretty active that the province is very focused on that valley compared to say maybe 10 years ago. So it's definitely a pretty active involvement. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Dr. Cote and anyone I may have missed.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think this would go to Steve. I have a question about your projects. Are they strictly focused at supports and help for wildlife, or do you also have the ability to work with the agricultural farmers? I know that I think it was last year they had a shortage of like ground cover for animals. So just wondering if you have the ability to work with beings besides wildlife. Thank you.
Yeah, we have multiple purposes. Wildlife is one, and the vast majority of our wildlife work, we fulfill that mandate through our partnership with HCTF. And so if you're interested in improving wildlife habitat or populations, I would encourage you to contact them. For us, we're more forestry oriented, as you can imagine. That's our name, and not so much in agriculture. But if you had an agriculture project that, helped with climate change, managing greenhouse gases, and improved forest recreational values, and protected a community, and all of the above with a single project, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you
so much. Are there any other comments? Okay, seeing none. On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation, and yeah, hope to hear from you again.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Okay. Okay, so that brings us to the next agenda item. There's no correspondence for action, so that brings us into section 7. We have 4 items for correspondence for information. Would anyone like to pull anything out? If not, we could have a motion to receive. Director Beckett, please go ahead. And then Director Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 7A, infrastructure or Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. I'm disappointed we didn't get the grant. This is a huge infrastructure challenge for us. We've had to do a number of repairs on that water line. And if we lose that water line, we effectively cut off water to the west side of Banfield. And it is what it is. I'm hoping that staff will continue to look for various grant opportunities. It's not when or not if, but when it fails. And again, this was part of the asset management where it was identified as something that needs to be replaced. So disappointed. Hopefully we can continue to find ways to find grant money for this. Thank you very kindly.
All right, thank you. Dr. Shannon, did you have a comment? No? Is there anybody else? Seeing none, could we have a motion to receive the reports for information? Correspondence for information. Thank you, Dr. Roberts and Dr. Shannon. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. That brings us into item 8, which is request for decision regarding the ACRD and Tashant First Nation government-to-government accord. Terry, do you want to introduce it?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the government-to-government accord we've been working on for a while now with Tashant First Nation, and it is now finalized and ready to sign. Normally at this point, we would love to share a meal with the nation and celebrate the signing, but we're thinking that because of COVID restrictions, that we might just be doing a joint press release at this time. We have discussed with them, and we have a working group meeting set up on Friday to further discuss the messaging in that press release. And just excited that we've got to this point and look forward to more government-to-government accords with our other partners.
Alrighty, thank you very much for that. I'd like to really recognize the amount of work that has been put into this by staff and directors involved in the conversations. It's been a ride, and this is just the beginning. So thank you all for contributing. I'm wondering, Dr. McNabb, please go ahead.
So I'd like to move that the Albany-Clayoquot Regional District direct staff to distribute a joint press release with the Tishat First Nation announcing the signing of the government-to-government accord.
And seconded by Director Paulson. Are there any comments or questions? Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. Just like to say that I've been working with the Tishat for the past 16 years on trying to move forward on us being able to work together. And it's such a great day to be bringing this forward. And I look forward to our working together with the city and First Nations, all First Nations with the board. And maybe one day they will actually be able to have a seat at the board with us. So just want to say I support this wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cote. Does anyone else have any other comments or questions? Okay, with that, all of those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so that brings us to item B, which is the donation to the village of Lytton. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the September 22nd board meeting, there was a letter from the Regional District of Mount Waddington who had made a donation to the village of Lytton from their fires this summer. And staff had been directed to look at some options for providing some funding as a donation. So the one area, or probably the only area staff have come up with, is the Special Events Fund. That's part of our region-wide grant and aid. We haven't had any requests for special events funding this year. And so the board, if they wish, could award up to $5,000 towards the village of Lytton as a donation.
Okay, Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you to staff for getting that information and clarifying. I was assuming that it was around $3,500 that Mount Waddington was donating. So I would like to meet that and make a motion that the regional district donate $3,500 to match Mount Waddington's donation to the village of Lytton for their coming from the Special Events Fund and the region-wide grant need to assist with the rebuilding of their community. I think that any amount that we could send will be of help to that community, and really want to help to support another community in BC. I think that meeting Mount Waddington's amount is appropriate. I think that we shouldn't completely deplete our funding. We do have other opportunities possibly in the future to have some funds made available to our own local needs. Thank you. So I kind of made a long motion with that.
We'll count that as the comment. Okay, do we have a seconder for the motion?
I concur in second.
Thank you, Director Coots. Okay, any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those. Oh, sorry, Director Shannon, please go ahead.
Sorry, just for clarification, 3,500, which I'm fine with, but just to be clear, on page 60, Mount Waddington's total was 3,413. So whichever, I mean, just if we're just writing up the thing, whether we're meeting it or choosing 3,500, I'm fine either way.
Director Cote, would you like to clarify? Please go ahead.
Thank you. I was just rounding it off.
Okay, that sounds fine. Okay, are there any other further comments, Director McNabb?
Well, I'm kind of the devil's advocate in this, but I really don't see this as our mandate. I think that the provincial and the federal government collect funds to provide for situations such as this, and the money that we collect, in my mind, is for use in the Albany-Clayoquot Regional District. So or to the benefit of the Alberta Clayoquot Regional District. So I all the sympathy in the world for Lytton and the First Nation as well, but I just don't see us as the provider for this. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Are there any further comments? Director Beckett, please go ahead.
Thank you. I have to agree with Director McNabb. I really struggled with this because there is such a need to help these folks out. But I take a look at the need in our own region, and I just wondering what our communities would say. Would they be in support of this? So thank you to Director McNabb for being able to raise this. Thank you, Director Cote, for your passionate plea and understanding for the needs up there. I am struggling with this, and again, I leave it, would our taxpayers support this?
Okay, we did catch what you're saying, but if you could speak a little louder next time, Director Beckett. It was some sort of, I don't know, like echoing, but not repeating those. Yeah, but we were able to hear you. Okay, are there any other comments? Oh, Dr. Coots, sorry about that. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question. I do believe it was close to 90% of Lytton's businesses and homes were destroyed. I do believe this is a community that is in need, and I do believe our community and our region would be in favor. I know we can't go to a poll, but it was a major catastrophic loss, and I feel that they would do the same for us. That's my comment. True.
Thank you, Director Coots. Okay, so Director Shannon, please go ahead.
Thank you. A question for staff. If this $5,000, is this would just roll over to next year? And then I guess my other question is these funds that are there, what have they been used for historically? And if we're discussing the merits of make a donation to somebody who needs it during a wildfire in a pandemic, or the struggle of keeping it in our area, is there then discussion of if we're to spend this money of a worthy cause? I'm sure there's many within our area, or we just don't, I guess is my question.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Terry?
Yeah, for sure. So if the money is not spent during the year, it will roll over to be surplus for grants in 2022. Historically, we've used it for like events that have popped up during the year. So for example, the wrestling club used to come for this just because of the timing of their event. So they've accessed this funding in the past. There was a basketball event that's used it for, then they were making donations to the community. I think Wendy's going to add one.
I recall the Beaver Creek Fire Department ran a some sort of exercise, an event in our community was used for that as well.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? I think Director Roberts, you had a comment?
Yeah, through the chair. Thank you, Director McNabb and Director Beckett, for your comments. I appreciate the sentiment of donating $3,500 to the Village of Lytton, but I don't believe at this point that it's appropriate until we find out who's at fault for this. I believe that there's going to be insurance involved, and I also understand the exact nature of the initial fire perhaps was caused by CP rail, track grinding or whatever, and I know the provincial government is involved as well. I think the timing of this could be perhaps a little later, but I understand and appreciate Director Cote's comments and also Director Coots. It's a mere drop in the bucket for the literally hundreds of millions of dollars that have destroyed that community, and I don't have a real firm grasp on where that's at right now. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, so seeing none, we have a motion to donate $3,500 to the Village of Lytton. I'm wondering if we could go to a vote now. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, looks like it's motion defeated. Okay. I'm sorry, Ron, did I miss you completely? I just saw that you had your hands up. No? Oh, you were in favor. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. That brings us now. Yeah, the motion has been defeated. That brings us now to item C, which are the follow-up, which is the follow-up for minister and ministry staff meetings. Carrie, did you want to take this?
Thank you. So in conjunction with the Ubcm convention, ACRD directors and some staff attended many minister and ministry meetings, which we have summarized here on the agenda. The only action item that I had out of those meetings was to write a letter to the CRTC regarding the barriers to accessing emergency services that came out of our ministry meeting. And then just to note that as part of the other reports later in the agenda, we have included a roundtable so that directors have an opportunity to discuss other topics if they like that occurred at the actual convention itself. And that's all.
Okay, thank you very much. We do have a motion before us for one of those items, however. So, Dr. Beckett, if you wanted to, please go ahead.
Thank you. Take a motion that the Bernie Claycott Regional District Board of Directors writes a letter to the Canadian Television.
Dr. Beckett, yeah, is there something blocking the microphone on your device, maybe?
Can't find anything. Hang on.
Yeah, that is better. Maybe it's if you face the device, it might be better. Okay, but please continue, sorry.
Okay, can you hear me now, Chair?
Yes.
Is that better? Okay. I'm going to have to look over my shoulder here now. That the Bernie Claycott Regional District Board of Directors writes a letter to the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission regarding the barriers to access emergency services due to the intermittent or complete lack of cellular service in many of our region's remote communities and highways.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? It looks like Director Roberts. Thank you. Do we have any comments?
Mr. Chair, if I could just quickly follow up, is this possible to also CC it to the appropriate ministry as well?
Yes, that can be included.
Thank
Okay,
you.
for comments, I'm wondering if you could raise your hands again. I just had Dr. McNabb, Dr. Shannon, Dr. Steer. So we'll go Dr. McNabb, Dr. Shannon, Dr. Steer. Please go ahead.
At our North Island 911 meeting, the board moved to have a letter sent to the three largest cell service providers in British Columbia with regards to cell service and cell reception. One of the things that came out of the discussion was that TELUS had some kind of glitch in their system which was affecting iPhones and iPhone bar reception that they appears to be related to the upgrade to 5G and that their intention is not to repair it. So I mean, that's sort of second or third hand information, but I think that these cellular companies have the ability to improve signals, but are for some reason or other just not doing it. So I think this letter will maybe help motivate the CRTC to tap them on the shoulder and tell them to get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Dr. Shannon and then Dr. Steve.
Thank you. My comment's really going to piggyback on what Dr. McNabb just said. I've been hearing from a number of constituents in my area and in the Beaver Creek area about deteriorating service, particularly with TELUS, and that might be coming out of what John has heard. I'm wondering if we can amend the motion to include deteriorating cellular service if it was okay and now it's gotten worse, in addition to it intermittent or lack of, like, because it's starting to fail and a number of people are just so frustrated. There's trying to find other options, other carriers, just because it's getting so bad, even close to town.
Okay, thank you for that. Would you like to make that an amending motion so it can be seconded? It's probably the quickest way to do it. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director McNabb. Any comments on the amending motion? I think it makes sense and it doesn't hurt to add it. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Excellent. All right. So now back to the main motion. We have Director Steer. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I didn't get my hand up quick enough. I did want to make a comment. I don't know if this is the appropriate time towards Terry's synopsis there, and I had a question around the round table and the follow-up. Would this be the appropriate time, or should I wait until we're finished dealing with the motion?
I don't know. Let's finish
I didn't
the
get
motion.
my hand up quick enough.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So later in the agenda we'll have the roundtable. So maybe we can do it then.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Any further comments on the main motion? Okay. Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Thank you. That brings us to item D, which is UBCM grant for the evacuation route planning for the West Coast region. I don't know who's speaking.
It's actually me today. Ms.
Okay.
Center is not able to attend. So this year we had a grant for the Alberni Valley to do evacuation route planning, and looking forward, the Protective Services Manager has identified the areas of Long Beach and Bamfield as our next area that we require this type of report. So she's reached out to the 4 treaty nations who are all interested in participating from a staff level in this. So we're going to go together as joint partners if all of their councils agree. And looking to, it kind of sounds a little bit odd with it being Bamfield, which is completely different in geographic location to Long Beach, but it would be one plan and one contractor to execute the plan. So it was brought to the West Coast Committee, but looking for the board's endorsement today.
Great. Director Roberts, please go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair, yes, I'd like to make that nomination that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors apply to the Union of BC Municipalities, the Community Emergency Preparedness Program Fund, for evacuation route planning for the Bamfield and Long Beach electoral areas with interested grant partners.
Great. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Beckett.
If I may, I'd like to see, as part of that sort of tongue-in-cheek, that there's going to be a bridge built between Area C and Bamfield.
It's called a ferry. Okay, do we have any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Dr. McNabb recently took it. It's not too bad, apparently. Okay, that brings us to item E, which is the Rogers Communications cellular tower at the West Coast landfill. Please go ahead. Hi, Jane. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a long-standing project. We've been working with Rogers Cell Communications to look at putting a cell tower at the West Coast landfill. This will provide additional coverage for cell service in the area where it isn't actually very good right now. Excellent cell service at the landfill will be in our future. We are looking at approximately $17,000 in payment for this annual license to establish a cell tower. Rogers will be required to still do a bit of work once this agreement is settled, so they'll have to do some notice and consultation as well as a mail out, ensure that it is meeting NAV Canada regulations. But otherwise, we have determined that the operational and logistics side of things will work, and this is a fair and reasonable contract price. So we're recommending that the board proceed with entering into this contract agreement.
Thank you for that. Director McNabb, please go ahead.
Just sort of, I read through this contract, and with regards to the property taxes part of this, the language didn't give me kind of warm and fuzzy feeling about the recovery of increased property taxes. One of our North Island 911 towers that is co-occupied with, I believe it is Rogers. The taxes when they went on to that tower went up $4,500 a year. So I think the language is there to steer that in the right direction, but it might be more obvious to put a second line in there and say that any increase in property taxes due to this, because BC Assessment Authority will assess a tower, and once they know it's there, and we should be prepared for that. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Are there any other comments? Seeing none. Good. The motion is pretty straightforward. Dr. Roberts, go ahead.
Through the chair to Ms. Brunn, do you know the height of the tower that's going in there?
I apologize. I think it is in the agreement. I don't know it off the top of my head. I'd have to look through and check.
Okay. Any further comments or questions or motions? Anyone? Thank you, Director McNabb.
So I will move the motion.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Hey, Dr. Beckett, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. No one mentioned 5G yet. Okay. That brings us to item F, the Long Beach Airport contamination item. Is that you again? Please go ahead.
Yes, so we're requesting that the board direct us to write a letter to the MLA and the minister responsible for Transport Canada to basically fulfill the obligations of Transport Canada to assist us in doing some cleanup at the Long Beach Airport. So when the airport was transferred from the federal government to the ACRD, there was an assessment of the soils done at the time to determine if there's any contamination, and at that time there was some found, which was addressed. There is still some outstanding issues with asbestos in buildings, but specifically this summer, as we're looking at moving forward with development and long-term leases of the sites, we've undertaken a stage 1 contamination review, which has located and identified a large amount of asbestos on one of the properties, which was currently unknown, but it predates the agreement for the transfer. So based on the transfer agreement, we feel very strongly that that is the responsibility of Transport Canada or for the federal government to pay for the cleanup of that under the agreement. We have exhausted our communication line on a staff-to-staff level, so we would like to move forward with a letter at the political level.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions or motions? Director Steer, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. I appreciate that. And I'm just wondering, I know it's outside of the municipality's responsibility area, but would there be value in bringing it to well, in Tofino Council, I can't speak for Rochelle, but to bring this forward to Tofino Council to support that letter, would there be value in that coming forward?
Through the chair, that may be required. I think we can maybe do it in a step-by-step basis. So we'll see if we get some response on this, and if we don't, then yes, we would like to look for more support.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none. If we could have a motion to create the letter. Thank you, Director Roberts, seconded by Director Beckett. Any further comments? I see none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, next item is the Beaver Creek Water System vehicle purchase.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item went to the Beaver Creek Water Committee at our last meeting, and the committee supported the resolution to do a minor financial plan amendment to transfer funds from the capital reserve to the vehicle reserve to basically replace our third vehicle that we have at the Beaver Creek Water System. It also supports other services, but essentially we are in need of a hydraulic lift to address some safety concerns and be more functional and operational as a group. The vehicle that we have is a small Ranger and can't support a hydraulic lift. It's a 2009, so it is, we feel, an appropriate decision to look at replacing that, or sorry, I think it's a 2011 Ranger, which will then get shifted to the Long Beach Airport. But we are recommending that we do this vehicle adjustment for operational and safety improvements, and that was supported by the committee.
Okay, thank you. Director McNabb, please go ahead.
So as Mr. Austerity buying a $50,000 truck when we're using duct tape to seal pipes, it's not really sort of high on my priority, but I realize, you know, that we've got health and safety concerns. The one thing that we did discuss was the appropriate value of the 2011 Ford Ranger going to another service. So I hope that the new individual sitting in that asset seat will carry out that request, that it be at appraised value rather than book value. So I would move that the Alberta Clockwork Regional District Board of Directors approve the 2021 financial plan amendment, moving $30,000 from Capital Development Fund to the Motor Vehicle Replacement Fund.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Bodner. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, next item is the Beaver Creek Water System, Georgia Road Water Main Abandonment. Please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, this also came from the Beaver Creek Water Committee. There is one of our higher priority water mains on Georgia Road that really does need replacing. It is high risk and high consequence, and so it is really at the top of our list. We had applied for some grant funding to do the replacement, and we're not successful with that. Last year, we had a similar water line. There's only a few of these in the system that actually parallel the city boundaries and the Beaver Creek boundaries. And so there are parallel water lines in the ground. And the one that we did last year was around Compton Road. And instead of replacing the aging water main in the ground, we actually took the services and moved them onto the city system. So looking at this, this situation on Georgia Road as well, staff were in discussions from the city and the ACRD, and we looked at it, and city staff have agreed that this is a viable option. And it's a huge cost savings. And so we estimated to replace the Georgia Road water line would be about $750,000, whereas to transfer the services over will be about $185,000. So it's a significant savings to the system. From a customer user perspective, there will be no difference. And we are hoping to get this done this year. We hadn't budgeted for it, so we are looking to do a financial plan amendment because we can do it in the latter part of this year because the cost is so much lower than what we had budgeted for to do the replacement. So we are asking the board for a financial plan amendment so that we can complete this project by the end of the year, which will also save costs for emergency repairs.
Okay, thank you, Director McNabb. I see that you're unmuted, so please go ahead.
Alrighty, so I would move that the Albany Clockwork Regional District Board of Directors approve a financial plan amendment to allocate $185,000 in the 2021 for the completion of the Georgia Road Water Main Abandonment Project duct tape. Well, it's not really duct tape, it's fixing it.
All right, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Bodner. Okay, any further comments? A lot of duct tape. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. That brings us to the burning regulation bylaws. Alex, please talk slow. Director Shannon has something to say about this.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the two burning bylaws are presented for you today. They were given third reading at the September 22nd board meeting. At that meeting, the board also directed a public communication plan with a goal to help build knowledge within the region about the regulations and to highlight the intent and the benefits of implementing the new burning restrictions. So with this report, staff have highlighted the communication activities that have taken place since the last meeting. We have presented the bylaws to be considered for final adoption. I will say that staff have had a lot of conversations with members of the public over the past week and a half since the notices were mailed out and the newspaper ads were published. I will share that the majority of these conversations have been positive, with people reaching out to learn about the new regulations and often finding that their outdoor burning practices and their wood stoves actually already comply with the requirements that the new bylaws would institute. So I mean, there has been some general resistance to new regulations, but in my opinion, the communication plan is working to build awareness within the region, which was the goal of the plan. So we're happy to answer any questions you might have. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. Are there any comments or questions? Director McNabb and then Director Cote. Please go ahead.
So I would move that bylaw R1030 solid fuel burning appliance emission regulation bylaw be adopted.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Paulson. Okay, any further comments? Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to say thank you to staff for the publications that did go out. I had one person talk to me about, ask me questions around this mail out that came out. And that was about it. That came to my house, which was good because there was a lot of people that actually did that survey from my area. I believe something like 235 people in the beginning. And there was a lot of questions around fireplaces and that type of thing. A lot of people are saying that they're part-time residents here and don't really use it. So there's only in emergencies. So I think it was all explained about fireplaces and that type of fire use. So with that, I think that staff have done their due diligence in reaching out to the community to inform them of the changes since the survey, because there was some clarification that needed to be done. I know that Director Shannon actually wanted the APCs to have a further discussion about this. There was no time, but I think that we can move forward without that at this point, but we still do have time before November the 1st if there's APC, there is an APC meeting that's coming forward that we can discuss the changes at that point. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Cote. Are there any further comments? Director Bodnar, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I know this seems to be going on for a long time, and it's nice to see the end. What I would like to know is all the information that has been put out public. Will it be on the website so that people can see it and address any of their concerns at that time or questions?
Yes, thank you, Director Bodnar. The website has been updated. We have a dedicated burning bylaw review website linked on our website, and that has the up-to-date bylaws, which would be replaced with the adopted bylaws if that's the case. It also has links to all of the staff reports and board reports with all the background information and the survey results as well. So we have attempted to share all of that information in one hub, and we look forward to updating that as we move along with the implementation of the regulations, and then using that as a tool to help communicate with the public. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay. It's been moved by Director McNabb and seconded by Director Paulson. Are there any other comments? This is the first of the motions regarding R103 as well. No? Okay. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
I would move that R1032 outdoor burning smoke control regulation bylaw be adopted.
Great. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cole. Any further comments? Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, a question to staff through the chair. Just wondering about the outdoor burning smoke control regulation bylaw. Just on how we are going to be policing this, and will there be ticketing for it? Thank you. When we ever get that ticketing bylaw in.
Do you want me to answer this, Alex? I'm happy to address it.
Sure, go ahead.
It's going to be like all of our other bylaws. On a complaint basis, we will respond. Currently, there is no ability to ticket. The only ticketing we have is for the zoning bylaw. So that's certainly something we can discuss moving forward. You know, whether we want to include this in the ticketing portion. So it will be on a complaint basis, and then we will be following up with property owners when we get a complaint.
Go ahead, Director Cote, follow up, and then Director Mina.
Thank you. So just to follow up regarding, most people do burning on the weekends. So I'm just wondering how we will approach that. Thank you.
If we will follow up with the complaints, and then if it's in a fire service area, we can coordinate with the fire department.
Okay. Thank you, Director McNabb and Director Shannon. Welcome back. We're discussing the second motion under item I.
So yesterday was our Vancouver Island Climate Change Committee, AVICC subcommittee meeting, and they were looking for things that we had done in our regional districts to improve or to act against climate change. And this was one of the things that I told them we were bringing forward after a great deal of discussion. And I think that it definitely is climate change related, and it is something that we absolutely need to carry forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Are there any further comments or questions? Go ahead, Director Shannon.
Thank you. My apologies for missing the first part of this whole discussion. I just I wanted to bring forward and interrupt me if this was brought up already. A comment that I had from a constituent on the flyer that came out regarding the new these new regulations that are coming in. Like I said, stop me if you guys talked about this already. But the comment was while the flyer looked great, they really wished that even on the back of the flyer, there was some information of what the new regulations would be, like burning times, that kind of thing, just to have a hard copy of it, especially at the rural areas where it's then more work to try and find a website if you've got access to a computer or the internet. That just would have been really helpful.
Okay. Thank you for that. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, it's been moved by Director McNabb, seconded by Director Cole. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried.
My work here is done.
Yeah. Okay, that brings us to planning matters. So 9.1 is Wild Pacific Estates. Yeah, is this Alex? Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you. This is a development variance application that relates to a proposed 16-lot subdivision in the Itatsu Bay area east of Euclid. The variance would reduce the required minimum lot width for 2 of the proposed lots in the subdivision. Staff recommend that the board proceed with the next step of the development variance process to notify neighboring residents and property owners before making a final decision on the variance. And again, happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions? Director Roberts, you can have the floor first.
Yeah, through the chair, there has been additional information supplied to planning staff in this matter. I don't have an issue at this point. I'd like to hear comments from planning staff with regards to the legal issues concerned. I would consider that the board of directors consider issuing a development permit, a variance permit, DVC 21003, subject to neighboring properties being notified as per Local Government Act S499. And I would like to see some input from the other neighboring communities as well with regards to this. So I don't know if Alex or Mr. Dyer have any other comments on this. Thank you.
So I'd be happy to address that, Mr. Chair, initially before there's any other comments. Some of the land clearing and road work is already underway on the property, and I believe that's what Director Roberts is referring to. The applicants have submitted reports from a professional biologist, geotechnical engineer, and a hydrogeologist to support a development permit application, which will be considered concurrently with the issuance of the variance. So the development variance application is really one of the conditions that needs to be met prior to the regional district supporting subdivision approval by the ministry. The other one is the development permit, and so the intent here is to review the professional reports that they've submitted in conjunction with the development permit area guidelines in the OCP, and also in conjunction with the work that has already taken place on the property. The intent here is to obviously ensure that any development on the property meets the objectives of the development permit area to protect, enhance, and restore the riparian areas that dissect the property. So we want to make sure that step has taken place. This is just the first step of the development variance application, and the intention would be to consider the development permit application and the public correspondence received as part of the neighbor notification and the variance application at the same time. So hopefully that makes sense, and happy to help answer any other comments the directors might have.
Thank you. Director McNabb, please go ahead.
So just saying that I'm the seconder on that motion.
Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. Are there any other further comments or questions? Okay. All those in favor? All opposed? And motion carried. Wild Pacific Estates makes me think of like a big winery. Yeah. Okay, so we are now coming up on item 9.1b. So we'll ask Director Bodner to be disconnected. And while we're talking about this, I'm wondering if any of the hosts or people who run the technology, Director Minions is running into Wi-Fi trouble. She's hoping to call in with her cell phone. Rather than data, she would use her cell. I don't know the number, and I couldn't forward it to her. Okay, thank you. Okay, and I haven't been checking to see if Diane left. Okay. Okay, so she's been disconnected. Okay, that's item B. Alex, are you taking this, or is it?
This one's mine.
Okay, please go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so this is regarding rezoning application RD 21005 for Mickety on Taylor Arm Drive. So a public hearing was held on October 4th via Zoom. 8 members of the public attended, and we also received 8 letters and combination of letters and emails. This is a rezoning application for approximately 7.9 acres of waterfront of a larger 90+ acre property. So right now they're just looking at rezoning this waterfront portion for a proposed 5-lot subdivision. There was concerns and questions raised regarding parkland, where the parkland would be, and how access to lands beyond. So there's a district lot 950 is owned by the province, is adjacent to this property, or just to the northwest, and how access would happen. And there was also questions about the development of the rest of the property. So the applicant had indicated that they are going to be looking to develop the balance of the property, a portion of which is zoned RA1, which would allow for some residential subdivisions, but the majority of the rest of the property is zoned A3, which is a holding type zone that allows agriculture and larger lot uses and has a minimum parcel size of 10 acres. So prior to adoption, the staff recommendation is that we would work with the owner to register a covenant that addresses where the parkland would be, which would include access to a larger parkland area along the waterfront, as well as limiting the maximum number of lots on the area being rezoned to 5 lots. So I'm going to stop there. I do, in discussions with Director Cote, know that she wanted to had some comments about this application as well.
Please go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. Through the chair. So prior to processing this rezoning application, there was a lot of requests from the public for more information on the property as a whole. They're interested in seeing the layout of parkland. There's a wetland, a big wetland that needs designation, and how that will be done has not been answered at this point. At this point, I think it's respectful and fair to provide that information on the changes to the community around this. This is a very large piece of land. It's 93.5 acres. I'm curious as to what happened. Can't remember the year that this was rezoned. A piece of this land was rezoned at the other end of the property, and it's 15.8 acres. To rezone that area and then leave the rest of it in 10-acre parcels. So now we're going to the other end, the only piece of this property that actually has water access. And people are aware that there will be development, but I think that with consideration to the changes that this development is going to make to the character and to access that the previous property owner has allowed through this large piece of property, I think that needs to be addressed before we move forward. I think they're quite valid questions regarding the wetlands, the parkland. There was nothing that was committed to in writing. So I don't think we're quite there yet. I do want to work with this developer. I think that he wants to do the right thing within the community, but at the public hearing, there was so many questions. I'd like to bring this back to the developer and get some more information on the property as a whole. There's how many acres did I say? There's still 69.8 acres at 10-acre lots. So there's a lot of land there, and this is a small community on a small dead-end road. The provision going to lot 950, lot 950 is not a park yet, and there's no guarantees that that will actually develop in the future. So we would like to work all of this together. I think it's just a little premature. Thank you.
I think Director McNabb has a comment. Please go ahead.
So just clarification and kind of a point of order on this. If we bring new information into this, we have to redo the public hearing. So that means negating this public hearing and putting another public hearing in process. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be correct. Okay. If the board requests new information from the applicant, we would be required to hold a second public hearing.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. Through the process, do I still need to make a motion to receive the public hearing report and minutes? Or do we just...
No. Yes, I recommend that the board receive the public hearing report and receive the public hearing minutes. That is still part of the development application, even if we were to hold a second public hearing. So it's important that the board do the first two things.
Okay, so I'm prepared at this time to make the recommendation that the Board of Directors receive the public hearing report.
Do we have seconders? Oh, everyone. Thank you, Director McNabb. Okay. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried.
I would move that the Board of Directors receive the public hearing minutes.
Seconded by Director McNabb. Any comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, and then the next steps will be to leave the rest for after a second event. Is that the idea here? Go ahead, Mike. I think you're already on.
So go ahead, I'm unmuted. So I would just ask that the board or through Director Cote provide sort of what it is that you're wanting. So if there's additional information from the property owner, if that's being requested, we should have a motion to request additional information and then direct staff to hold a second public hearing would be an appropriate motion.
I make that motion.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Becca. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Oh, Director McNabb had a question.
Oh, sorry, Director McNabb, please go ahead.
So what that motion doesn't say is what additional information we're looking for. So I think that has to be in there, if I'm not mistaken. So.
Okay, Director Cote?
Thank you. So what is in the public hearing report and minutes is requests from the community regarding information on what is going to be developed with the property as a whole, not just piecing a piece out of it, which would be the only water access on this piece of property. It would be nice to know what's happening with the rest of the 93.5 acres before we start developing a piece of it. And also there was information that was requested regarding parkland dedication, water access, information regarding Ministry of Transportation. Did there need to be a road access? There was a request on what's going to happen with the wetland. Will parkland will that be considered part of the parkland dedication? So those are the questions. The questions were in the public hearing minutes, in the letters and requests from the community. More of, we'd like to know what the community would like to know, what is the future of that whole big piece of property.
So that if I may just ask a question, because we'll be asked by the applicant. So at this stage, is the board looking for a rezoning application for the entire property, or rather a development concept for the balance of the property prior to proceeding with this bylaw development for the 7.9 acres?
Go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. The actual rezoning would be good, but even a development concept. The development, the larger developments that have occurred within Sprout Lake, we have never had something come to us that's piecemeal. It's been large tracts of land that have had plans. They didn't have to be complete. Comes to mind the one out at Great Central Lake. There was different zonings within that development with a concept. There was dedication. We knew that we wanted to have access to water for the public. There was this type of information that was provided. It wasn't completely secured, but because things changed a bit, but the basic idea of the development was there. There is no information on anything besides, we know that one area is zoned RA1, a small piece, that's about 15 acres. And then this piece that they want to peel off with nothing else, no idea of what he's intending to do with the rest of the property. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
So I would just say, so at this stage, the board is, or Director Cote is requesting a development concept for the balance of the property. I think it would be very different to bring back a bylaw. That would mean we going back to start from square one. A rezoning bylaw, but my recollection from the discussion and questions from the public is they were wanting to know what will happen with the balance of the property if the property owner were to come back with a development concept. As long as a rezoning application would be required if things are going to be changed from A3. So there is some development potential on the RA1 portion of the property that can happen without any rezoning application, but the balance of the property, if it's going to be smaller than 10 acres, requires a rezoning application. So that can come back as a separate application. So I want to be clear with I'm clear on our end what we're requesting, and so the applicant can then bring that back for information at a second public hearing.
Okay. So the next step could be leave it as it is, or would another motion be contemplated to cover?
So have we passed the motion to hold the second public hearing, and that public hearing be delegated to the electoral area director for Sprout Lake, the alternate director, or the chairperson of the board?
Okay, that hasn't occurred yet, so that would be the way to do it. Director Cote, would you like to move that?
I think I did make that motion. I just mimicked Mr. Erg, and I believe there was a seconder.
Yes, I had Director Cote and Director Beckett. But if I could confirm, are we wanting also included in that the applicant be requested to provide additional information on a development concept for the balance of the property, and further instruct staff to hold a second public hearing and delegate that public hearing? Is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, it's just so long as we have the delegation of the public hearing included in the motion, that's required.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't write all that down initially, so thank you. Okay, with that in mind, then it's been moved and seconded. So all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, that brings us to the next item, which is item C. We'll wait for Director Bodner to come back, or just oh, half a second later, here she is. Hi, Diane. Okay, that brings us to item C, which is RE 21001. It's a Beaver Creek item. So, Alex, please go ahead.
Happy to introduce. Thank you. This is a rezoning application for our property at 7799 Beaver Creek Road. The owners are applying to rezone the property from A1 to RA3 in order to accommodate a 2-lot subdivision of the property. A public hearing was held on September 27th, and the public hearing report and minutes are presented for the board's consideration. Staff recommend that the board proceed with second and third readings of bylaw P1431. Thank you.
Director McNabb, did you have a comment? Go ahead.
So I'd move that the board of directors receive the public hearing report.
Seconded by Director Roberts. Did you have a comment as well? No?
I mean, the only comment I have with this is, the one resident that was at the meeting, it sort of echoed something that I'm finding is coming forward in most subdivisions in Beaver Creek, and that is kind of a resistance to taking large pieces of property, make them smaller. So I think it is something that the APCs need to be thinking about. Although I'm pretty sure that with the 3,000 new homes that are projected for Port Alberni, it might take some of the weight off some of the rural areas a little more. So, and that was sort of the only comment I had. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments or questions regarding this motion? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried.
And I would move that the board of directors receive the public hearing minutes.
You do have a seconder. Thank you, Director Cote. Okay, comments? All those in favor? Motion carried.
And I would move the bylaw P1431 Regional District of Alberta Clockwork Zoning Atlas Amendment bylaw be read as in time.
Thank you, Director Roberts. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried.
And I would move that bylaw P1431 be read a third time.
And a seconder. Thank you, Director Cote. Okay. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 9.2, which are EA directors and Tofino. So this is a RC 20009 Long Beach item. Please go ahead.
Okay, this one is a rezoning application for the Clockwork Wilderness Resort lands at the head of Bedwell Sound north of Tofino. The applicants intend to align the existing wilderness campground resort uses at the site with a new comprehensive development zone and to allow for an expansion to the number of tent platforms and the guests permitted on site. A number of conditions of approval are recommended for you in the report as part of the rezoning application. This would include support from the House at First Nations, amendment of a restrictive covenant that would allow for up to 50 guests at one time and to limit new development adjacent to the Bedwell River, approval of a parking plan in Tofino, confirmation of health and safety requirements of existing buildings, and confirmation of adequate water and sewage disposal capacity to accommodate the full build out. So planning staff recommend that the board proceed with the first reading at this time and delegate a public hearing to gather community input on the rezoning application. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Go ahead, Dr. Steer.
Yeah, just a quick thank you for the inclusion of the parking plan for Tofino, as it says, I'm sure you're well aware, a very critical issue in the community. So thank you very much for that inclusion.
Great, thank you. Dr. Roberts, did you want to kick off?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Just to mention to Director Steer, yes, that was one of the issues that we were always concerned about. So I'm quite pleased that that's been taken care of with regards to parking and so on. I'd like to make a recommendation that bylaw P1416 Regional District of Alberta Clayoquot Zoning Text Amendment bylaw be read a first time.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Dr. McNabb, thank you. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Okay, motion carried.
Further, that the bylaw P1417 Regional District of Alberta Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment bylaw be read a first time.
Seconded by Dr. Shannon. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Okay, motion carried. All right, this next one is a two-parter, so you can do both of them.
That the public hearing for bylaws P1416 and P1417 be delegated to the Director of Electoral Area C, the alternate director or the chairperson of the regional district, and that the board of directors confirm that adoption of bylaws P1416 and P1417 is subject to confirmation of support from the Itatsu First Nations, B, modification of restrictive covenant EXO 12758 to allow for a maximum of 50 guests and 80 staff at the site, and to prohibit any land clearing or development within 30 meters of the natural boundary of the Bedwell River, with the exception of low impact access trails and maintaining existing improvements. C, approval of an appropriate parking plan to address off-street parking requirements in the district of Tofino. And D, submission of building plans to the ACRD building inspector to confirm necessary health and safety requirements of existing buildings on site. E, confirmation of adequate water and sewage disposal facilities to accommodate the full capacity of guests and staff on site. And F, meeting technical referral agency requirements.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. McNabb. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Great. Okay, so that brings us to the home stretch here. We don't have any reports or staff reports, nor do we have any committee reports. We do have one item for other reports in regards to the Vancouver Island Regional Library. It's the financial plan. Oh, as well as a roundtable for the Ubcm convention. So, Dr. Cote, did you want to take the first item?
Sure. So a week and a half ago, Vancouver Island Regional Library passed their financial plan for 2022 to 2026. And I had highlighted too many things going on today. Our increase, see if I can find it here, sorry. Nope, it's not on there. Sorry. Is about a 4% increase, I believe, for the regional district. It varies because it changes with population and assessments within each area. So we had a little bit of an increase of population, and assessments. So that would be why ours is above the average of 3.4 something. And just to report out that Bureau has a new administrator, and we will be doing our strategic planning session in 2022. We'll start it. Getting public comments, consideration, and reviewing our strategic plan regarding building of libraries and it's our companion documents that are work with our financial plan and strategic plan on the building of new libraries and the continued support to library services. And once again, I'd like to say that I brought up the fact that Alberni Clockwork Regional District is the only regional district that has no bricks and mortar. So we have no, we simply support the service as a whole. And that Tofino is looking at a new library, and they do not take into consideration surrounding areas, only the population of Tofino, which is not adequate. When you take into consideration that the regional district has no bricks and mortar, that we are provided service by our neighboring municipal incorporated entities, Tofino, Euclid, and Port Alberni have libraries, but we're not counted in there at all for service. So trying to make that change come forward. The city of Port Alberni also has a library that only identifies the population of Port Alberni. It does not include any of the rural areas in that population data, which is wrong because that is our source. We do pay into that service and we're not counted. So our library should be take that into consideration in their size and their offerings. So that is something that I will be bringing forward for the next year. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Dr. Cote? Dr. Steer, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Director Cote for her work on this, and she knows our Councillor McMaster here in Tofino and the work that they've done, and she's identified a very critical issue that I'm glad she's on, and Duncan, Councillor McMaster is on as well. It does affect many people in the region, not just part of the ACRD, but some of the surrounding First Nation communities that are not included in the catchment for the service that Burrell provides. So thank you very much for your work on that.
Yes, definitely. In a world where the cost of living is going up pretty high, I think libraries may become more important. It's one of the few places that you're not expected to spend money. So let's not forget that. Okay, next up now is a roundtable in regards to our experiences at the Ubcm convention. I know that it's a bit far removed from our experiences, more than, I guess, 3 weeks now. But this is the time we have, so I'm wondering if anybody wanted to maybe kick off their experiences. Or I can pick someone. Okay, Dr. Shannon, please go ahead.
Thank you. I will start off with that it was a little bit tricky to attend the whole convention with school starting and young kids in that. So I made sure I hit all the voting opportunities, otherwise, and then certain meetings that we had with ministers. Otherwise, I will admit it was very difficult for me to get any more of the convention in. I was disappointed. I believe we ran into this issue last year too, when it came to voting on resolutions, that we just simply ran out of time. And it would have been great to get through all the resolutions, because there were a few that I felt were really important. And when the time's up, the time's up. And that has since gone on to executive. I mean, voting was fairly easy to do. You just sat there and went through the motions. They did a really good job of that. So that's kind of my summary of the convention. And I don't know, Chair Jack, is this where we can also go back to where we had in our minutes from our ministry meetings, where we can have some discussion there?
Let me check with Wendy on that. We have some items that are in camera relating to, I think, the Ubcm. So
to be more specific, just if we go back to page 61 of our agenda, where we have ministry staff meeting follow-up information report, because I just want to touch on one of those right here.
Please go ahead. If it's in the open agenda, then yeah, you can talk about it.
Okay. Just saying that I said on most of the calls that I could. We talked to, I'm just going to touch base on the Ministry of Agriculture call that we had with Minister Lana Popham. I think we had a good discussion. It was mostly about insurance rates and accessibility to insurance in general, especially for those that are starting to get into the meat processing and going through the loops and hoops of all that. I see in our report and from the letter that's attached in our agenda on page 64 and 65 from the Ministry of Agriculture, I'm a little bit disappointed that they've acknowledged that we talked about the rising cost of insurance, but they have not mentioned the accessibility to even get insurance for some people. And I wanted that to be very clear in our meeting. We do have a follow-up, and I will be plugging that in again there. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, I'm just going to go down the list as I see it in the participants item. So after Dr. Shannon, I have, well, Alex didn't go, I don't think. So but Dr. Beckett, if you want to go, please go ahead. No? Pass. Dr. Bodner, did you have any comments? Just roundtable style?
Yes. First thing, I was quite impressed with you, John Jack, and what you had to say. And I really feel that I hope that people take notice of where to start with making reconciliation with the First Nations. And that was my first thing that I noticed and was really impressed on. The other one was from Murray Sinclair, who spoke about the Indigenous people and some of their background. I thought that was very interesting. And the mayor from Ashcroft, when she was talking about how to prepare for emergencies. And I really thought that a lot of things that she said that we could certainly pick up and put into our different things that we could do to help with having to deal with emergencies. And I certainly hope that I have the opportunity to when we talk about evacuations and whatnot, to bring up some of her comments. So those were sort of my highlights, although I have pages of notes.
Thank you, Dr. Bodner. Dr. Roberts, did you have anything you wanted to say? No? Okay, Director Cote.
Thank you. I too have lots of notes. Just a couple of touches. The UBCM Select Committee on Local Government Finance was very interesting, and I'm sure that we'll be hearing a lot more about that. 2021, they reestablished the reports with the terms of reference, ensuring local government resiliency. Today's recover, tomorrow's new economy. So there's 20 recommendations for advocacy with a strategic plan, including a budget to start small. Transitioning from tangible to non-tangible. So that'll be interesting to see how that works. The three key areas of that were attainable housing. So for us, it might mean land contributions, service costs, development cost changes, exemptions, waivers, and reductions in property tax exemptions. The other next one would be community safety, policing, justice, fire, ambulance, cannabis regulation, and cybercrime. And the third would be climate change, mitigation and adaptation, emergency management, housing, building, transportation, transit, and solid waste. Also at UBCM, the MIA had their AGM. Chair Charles Hamilton steps down after 27 years. The capital sits at 96 million, up from 84.2 million at the end of 2019. Paid out over 10 million in claims in 2020. Was a very solid year despite COVID. Due to the higher risk, MIA is optimistic for 22 dividends to be coming back again. I also attended the UBCM Forestry Breakfast with Honorable Catherine Minister Conroy and Mayor Leonard Krog from Nanaimo, Terry Gigi, Regional Chief, BC Assembly of First Nations, and Susan Yurkovich, President and CEO of the BC Council Forest Industries. It was a very interesting conversation. The opposition also held a couple of plenary sessions, a pathway to true safe inclusions, communities, crime causes and impacts with Shirley Bond, Ina Joka. Anyways, Sylvia Lindgren. One of the stories was how difficult it is for youth. This person, young man, had to go to 4 agencies and spent 3 hours just trying to open a bank account. So life needs to be made easier for our youth and our residents. The concurrent cabinet town halls was great. Did all the resolutions. Learned about housing prospects, trends, key issues. The Rick Mercer interview was quite entertaining. MIA did a session on cyber security. But I think the most interesting was about global warning, lessons learned from the 2021 heat wave. Patrick Johnson's counselor for New Westminster reported on an area 1 kilometer square that has 10,000 people had the highest death toll in a concentrated area from this heat wave. So the lessons learned around the climate change and then the needs that are going to have to be taken out. We have to take action. Joanne Wagstaff, scientist, provided the data predicting that this is going to be a 1 in 10 year rather than a 1 in 100 year event. Talked about jet stream being locked in the impacts. The Pacific Northwest jet stream as it loops and creates this dome, and said that this wouldn't have happened without climate change. And there's measures that we need to start looking at and adopting as local leaders. I think it's important that we do what we can regarding climate change, mitigating everything that we can moving forward when we can. And that's my report. Yeah. Oh, John Jack did an excellent job on the Truth and Reconciliations panel. So congratulations, made us proud. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Director Cote. So you mentioned Johanna Wagstaff, and her content was excellent. I just wanted to add a supplemental to that. Johanna Wagstaff did a podcast, a series of like 20-minute episodes that you can get from wherever you get podcasts on your device. It's called 2050: Degrees of Change. And a lot of what she talked about is covered off in a different way through that series. And it's definitely worth a listen if you commute a lot like I do. Okay, so the next item, or the next person, I guess, can be Dr. Steer.
Thank you, Chair Jack. I won't give an overview of that there. I think it was succinctly done by everyone here. I did have a question in terms of the roundtable, the follow-up actions from the ACRD and how, Terry alluded a bit to it, and I'm curious about how the process moves forward as I will be encountering that myself. What are the ways that that we move those actionable items or identify the actionable items? And then what is the procedure for moving those forward? Is it through staff to go to ministerial staff to provide follow-up on many of the items that that do come out of our ministerial meetings?
So we have had some ministry staff reach out and have been setting up some follow-up meetings to some of the topics. So we're definitely going to try to keep things moving along in that manner. Some of them, I would say, didn't necessarily have a follow-up action that was logical. It was more of just interaction with them at this point. So definitely, if there was something that you're wanting to have move along that you don't see, say, in the next month, please make sure you reach out to staff and we'll make sure we're getting that going for you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and that was the appropriate from directors to staff to follow up with the appropriate ministerial staff member. Thank you.
Yeah, and if we get to a point where we're not seeing the response we like, we can elevate this to being more political pressure as well. Try to get it from both angles and then see what's what. Depends on what it is, of course, but we can have those discussions. Okay, I think next up I'll ask if, Dr. Paulson, please go ahead.
I'm sure we all have pages and pages of notes, but I just wanted to mention that the resolutions that came from our area, extending the life of fire apparatus, improved access to detox and treatment centers, and the unauthorized camping crisis, all three of them were passed in a block. So I would hope over the next year, the provincial government will respond to us. Also, the community economic development.
Director Paulson, can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
So I connected with my laptop. We're having some huge technical difficulties. We got like nothing but a huge buzzing sound. So no one here in the room can hear you, but I can because I'm on my laptop. So if we can just, if we can hit pause and maybe do the bio break now, and we'll come back at 4:05. Maybe that's the best way to do it. And we'll start with Director Paulson. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
We'll continue on with Ron, if you wanted to start up again. I think everybody else is here and can hear you, so please go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. I'll be even briefer than I was going to be before because I do have 15 pages of notes to refer to. But anyway, just a couple of things. First of all, Chair Jack, I really, really want to compliment you on your presentation, how articulate you were, and how proud I was to have you representing our regional district. Just a job really well done, Chair Jack. Thank you for all that you do for us. Very quickly, just I want to talk a little bit about the resolutions. And just so everybody knows, there are 3 resolutions from our area, and they all 3 resolutions passed in blocks. And that's the extending of life of fire apparatus, the unauthorized camping crisis, and improved access to detox and treatment centers, all passed in a block. So I would hope we would hear back from the province over the next year with regards to those. Also, the forest management in BC, the fiber for value-added manufacturers resolution passed. So I think we're all fairly excited about that. So just a comment on the resolutions, and Director Shannon, I've been to UBCM 7 times, and never have we ever made it through all of the resolutions, which I find very disappointing. And I believe that UBCM should actually be setting aside a little more time so that we can deal with resolutions. Also, the voting process for each resolution, you had a minute and a half to vote, and the minute and a half was in deference to some communities that may have a little longer period of time for connection electronically. But if we had cut that short by 30 seconds, we could have added another 45 minutes to resolutions. The other thing is I really enjoyed Rick Mercer. Although he deals with politics with tongue in cheek, boy, he'd make a great prime minister for us. I was a little disappointed in the Premier's presentation. It was very general and quite vague. I realized that there was election time shenanigans going on as well. But that's kind of my take on things. I found the breakout sessions, it's 2 years in a row we've gone without being there in person. And the breakout sessions I found were difficult to interact in. I actually sent in a couple of questions, which either we didn't have time or electronically or to respond to them. For instance, Premier Horgan, I sent a question regarding wildfire response and how we fight fire in British Columbia, in particular, adding Coulson Aviation to the firefighting toolbox. It didn't get answered, so that fight goes on and on. Thank you very much. There's way more to talk about. Chair Jack, thank you again for all that you do. That's so important.
Yeah, thank you again for that. Okay, we'll continue with the roundtable. I'm wondering if Directors Cole or Coots or Minions have anything they'd like to add. Yeah, I guess in that order. Director Cole, is there anything, if you're still here?
Director Jack, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Director
Jack,
Minions,
hi.
please go ahead.
Director Minions here. Thanks. Sorry, I've been having some challenges with my technology today as well. I just wanted to echo a lot of what's already been shared, and wanted to add, really appreciated the meeting that we had with Minister Farnworth around cannabis odors. And yeah, really just appreciated that initiative. And I think that there's potentially a push that could be made by UBCM going forward in the future to petition Health Canada to really resource, the regulation of cannabis facilities, whether they're under the old system or the new system. So I think that's something I'd like the board to consider for next UBCM. It's something that certainly in the city of Port Alberni, we are struggling with somewhat. And I know in the regional district, there's been some community members come forward with challenges as well. So I think that's something we could take forward and try to get UBCM advocating on our behalf. It's a federal issue, of course, but I think that there's a push for UBCM to handle that. And then just wanted to echo the comments around the resolution sessions as well. And although I agree it would be great to have more time for resolutions, I think we all enjoy the resolutions. I think another angle is that we very much could be pushing municipalities to put forward not necessarily fewer, but sometimes higher quality resolutions. I do think that there's a lot of duplication that comes forward. There's often resolutions that are not really relevant to the UBCM as a whole, but are more specific to certain municipalities. And I think as communities, if we could put forward, just be a bit more thoughtful in the resolutions we're putting forward, we could probably get through all of them and probably have UBCM be a more effective body. So definitely a balance, and I enjoy going through the resolutions as well. But yeah, I've certainly felt in the past that there's some that take up a lot of time that aren't really our mandate as local government. So just thought I'd add that side of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Munoz. I'll check with Director Coots or Director Cole if they had anything as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No report or comments. Actually, well, one statement. I was unable to actually attend for the first time in my tenure the UECM, so I missed you all, and it was a shame I wasn't able to go, but or attend virtually, or however we want to phrase it these days. My nation's been keeping me busy, so I'm double booked and triple booked a lot of the time. So unfortunately, my mind was elsewhere, but I look forward, or I enjoyed hearing all your reports. Thank you. Sure.
Okay, thank you for that. Director McNabb, did you have any comments?
I'll keep it short because most of the other things have already been said, but I wasn't able to attend the Minister of Finance with regards to funding the local governments from cannabis tax money. But I almost feel like an MLA standing up in the House and saying, when will the minister recognize this? I mean, we brought this back to the table so many times, and we have validated cost, and not only the cost, but the aggravation and the torment that we've been through with the lack of knowledge, the lack of input, the lack of participation by municipal governments around this issue, because we're just kept out in the dark. And the promise prior, like many years ago, this goes back like 5 years, was that local governments were going to get a portion of the taxation. Well, so far that portion is zero. We're hoping for a little more than zero, because it's not just about the hard cost. It's about all those other things. How much time has our board spent lamenting this issue? And what's that worth? How do you quantify that? You know, like if you don't sleep at night because of an issue, who do you send that bill to? So I thought that response, I mean, most of the things that we had meetings with ministers, I thought was very proactive and well done. Minister of Health and the Farnsworth and so forth. I mean, they knew there was an issue. They knew the issue we were talking about was valid. You know, the staff brought up input that was productive, but this particular thing, I don't even know what we do with it. It's like the comment is recommends that staff gather information regarding incremental costs. We could have given to them right there. I mean, but incremental cost is not it. It's all of the other associated issues that are around this that we need to be funded for. So that's it. All of the other things that were said are completely valid. And it was a kind of a neat 4-day session, and sitting here in the room and rolling through all of this stuff. But you know, I felt quite connected with it, so I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I'll finish off too, echoing the sentiment that there are some items that do come up in our meetings that just don't get followed up on. It's clear that it's either not a priority, or it is not compatible with the governing approach that the government at the time is taking. So this is something where I think we do need to be more proactive with pressuring on both sides of the issue when it comes to staff and political. But there's another side to the political as well, which is the opposition. So I think those opposition sessions are just as important as the ministerial meetings as well. And in fact, they may end up being important enough to give briefings at some point almost in the same way, just to make sure that certain things, when we talk about them with government, if they're not followed up on, at least we're keeping kind of the opposition up to speed on that, so it can be raised in a way where it needs to be answered. I think that's something we should add as a tool to the tool belt, so to speak. So thanks for that. My experience was a bit hectic because I was mostly focused on the presentation and the panel discussion that I was having on reconciliation efforts. I signed up later than I should have. I registered later than I should have. So I missed probably the first couple hours of voting when it came to like the candidates. I was able to get in on time for all of them. The resolutions, I think, most importantly, I think I would like to have had a better handle on the ability to lobby our peers and do something even before all of this started. Not necessarily official letters, but just phone calls, which I may do in the future. I was very disappointed with the old growth logging resolution. It even being put forward the way that it was is not following with what our regional district relies upon from an economic standpoint, but also others kind of outside of downtown cores. And that's seems to be the theme of politics in BC and Canada. And I think that's the thing. The economic differences between our kind of two solitudes there are going to color relationships between Canadians and British Columbians. And that's just something we need to navigate. I don't really have much else in regards to feedback at the moment. However, I do think having a more concerted lobbying effort is probably the best thing I'm going to take away here. My mind's just kind of a buzz right now because I was trying to help with the computer stuff. So I'm just out to lunch there. So are there any other comments or questions? Did I miss anyone? Dr. Steer, go ahead.
Yeah, I did want to follow up, and it was part of, I did want to follow up on, and it's been a topic of conversation Director Paulson and Director Minions had brought up in terms of the resolution process. And one of the conversations we've been having is around the resolution reform. And these are conversations that are going on and that I'll be directing up to the executive. It is, as Director Paulson pointed out, over many, many UBCMs. We never get through a resolution process. And to Director Minion's point, the quality of those resolutions can often be a point of contention in terms of their relevance to the larger needs of all the municipalities and local government. And so I think it's an important discussion to bring forward to the executive of UBCM to start looking at the resolution process and how it can be better refined to reflect the needs of local governments in our lobbying efforts towards the province. So it is something that I think is well worth to continue that conversation. And I think it can also start at, and I'm looking at Director Cote, in terms of our regional association, so like at ABICC, where we start paring down that resolution process to really focus on our reform at that regional level. And so this is an ongoing conversation that I think needs to be addressed because it comes up at every time we debrief the UBCM and the resolution process. So I'd like to throw that out there, and at some point maybe we can have a more in-depth conversation about what that resolution reconfiguration maybe, or re-looking at it and to make it a much more efficient system. So that was the only thing I had to add to that, and just thank everybody here for their comments. They've been really enlightening.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, unless there are any other comments. Oh, Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'd just like to comment to Director Steer that ABICC is aware of that. We are trying to work on our resolution process, and UBCM is also aware. They actually asked us to have more focused resolutions coming forward. So we're working on it. Thank you.
Alrighty. I'm wondering if we could have a motion to accept the reports, both the BIRL report and the BCM one. Thank you, Director McNabb, seconded by Director Shannon. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. We're getting to a point where there's a dire amount of people whose cameras are on, so if you're present and a director and it's not awkward, if you could turn your camera on, that would be great. It's how I'm trying to track whether or not we. Okay, so that brings us to item 11, no unfinished business. Item 12, no late business. Question 13, I'll ask if we have any responses at our email address.
No, Mr. Chair, we have no input from the public respecting the meeting today.
Okay, then let's go into a motion to recess for the Regional Hospital District meeting. Thank you, Director Beckett, seconded by Director Roberts. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
So I would like to call the meeting of the Alberni-Clayquat Hospital District Board of Directors meeting to order and recognize that we are principally meeting on the territories of the Tishat and Hupetchesset First Nations, and that we celebrate that and honor it, and ask for an approval of the agenda, such as it is. Dr. Shannon, Dr. Roberts, any additions to the agenda? All in favor? Carried. No correspondence for action or information. No requests for decisions and bylaws. So we'll go to reports. Brownfield Health Center, Director Beckett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On Friday night, I received a phone call from VHA identifying that there were some cases COVID positive in the Banfield community. We've notified, with the help of VHA, notified the residents and the community health facility there is able to test on site. And I think it's just about behind us now. But, again, let's get out there and get vaccinated and move forward. So thanks to VHA for their help this past weekend, and of course thanks to the staff. Thank you, sir.
So Alberni-Clayquat Continuing Care Society, I'll make an attempt at making a report here. So you've probably all seen in the media with regards to some of the internal issues that have been affecting the Fur Park and Echo Village. And just to put forward the comfort that the board of directors and the executive have been dealing with this since its onset, and that there is a process that's in place to rectify it. So I'll kind of leave it at that. It's tough to report on because it is in camera and it is personnel. So that's about what I can say. Do you think that's right, Director Paulson? Okay. Okay, on from that, the West Coast Native Health Care Society, Director Cote.
Thank you. I missed their last meeting, but building away, doing well, I see.
And Tofino General Hospital, whoever wants to take that, Director Steer, you were calling me the other day on that, so maybe.
Yeah, thank you. And I just a small report. The site director, you may have heard there was an outbreak at the Tofino General Hospital, so she was very busy. But one of the messages that we did want to make very clear is the hospital is open, the emergency room is open. So any services that you normally do not hesitate. The hospital is where you go. It is open, and that's where people should be directed if there are emergency situations. And I was in contact with Director McNabb around, I'm meeting with the Tofino General Hospital Foundation subcommittee to give them an update on to the progress and towards looking at healthcare delivery system for the West Coast, aka potentially a new hospital. So they was able to provide me with some of the financial information moving forward. Then I'll be meeting with them on Friday to give them that information, and that's it.
Thank you. What Alberni Clay Quad Health Network?
Thank you. Meeting is next Wednesday, and there's nothing new to report. Looking forward to the Division of Family Practice to come and report out to those table of partners and make some connections. Thank you.
Okay, West Coast General Hospital, got a report. Last Friday at 12 o'clock, we had the groundbreaking. This is dirt from the groundbreaking, just so you guys all know that I was there. And I actually was asked to speak a little bit. So, you know, I wholly supported the renovation expansion of our emergency ward. And I mean, it's how many years past due? 4, 5? And I spoke to the foundation fundraiser chairperson, and he indicated that they're pretty much on target for what they have to raise. It does sort of beg the question, and is this the way that capital projects are going to go in the future, where foundations are expected to pick up 50% of the funding? I'm not sure that that's what the community expects. I mean, we've had some great contributions, but without them, would this project be scuttled? And our money's been sitting there for a very long time. The 40% that we committed to, the 60% was supposed to be the provincial government. I think it needs kind of a discussion. So anyhow, it is in process. I saw them digging. I was digging. I had a shovel. It was all good. So that's that. Any other reports? A motion to receive the reports A to G.
Second.
Okay. I don't know who was the mover.
I think
somebody
Jen,
does.
Director
Okay.
Shannon.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Anybody opposed? No, nobody's opposed. Late business question period. If there's anybody online, I don't think there is.
No, Mr. Chair, there is not.
Motion to adjourn A. That's Director Polson and Director Roberts. All in favor? Yay. We're off.
Already?
Is that a record time for a hospital meeting? Got to be close.
That was really good. It was like really good. Okay. So that brings us to reconvening at 4:34 p.m. And we'll be moving in camera and therefore not live streaming anymore as a result of that. But before we break it off, I'll read out the reasons why we're going in camera, because I think that's pertinent. So this is a motion to close the meeting to the public as per the community charter under sections 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the regional district or another position appointed by the regional district. 91F, law enforcement. If the board considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the conduct of an investigation under or enforcement of an enactment. And then 91I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. 91J, information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under Section 21 of FOIPA, which also includes 21(1)(ci) of FOIPA, harm significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the negotiating position of a third party or the third party. And then finally, 92B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to the negotiations between the regional district and the provincial government, or the federal government, or both, or between the provincial government or the federal government, or both, and a third party. So that is the motion for in camera. I will move that. Could we get a seconder, please? Thank you, Director McNabb. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay,